I'm with JDE Works, and you are in the right place to join JDE Works and Magic Software for 6 enterprise mobility priorities of highly effective CIOs running Oracle and JD Edwards. So here we are. I'd like to please introduce at this time Glenn Johnson, who is a vice president there at Magic Software, and Andy Bowie, who is going to be doing the demo portion of our webinar today and is a mobile technical consultant. And we're also joined by my partner, Dina Gribben, who's also on with us. Just a quick bit of housekeeping. We will be taking questions, and we're going to do it after the demo. So I just want to let you know that you can use your chat box to enter a question, and then questions will be addressed at the end of the demo. So hang in there for that. We do still have people logging in, but in the interests of time, we're going to go ahead and get started. So at this point, I'm going to toss over to Glenn.
Thank you very much, Cynthia, and thanks to JDE Works. We appreciate your hosting this today.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Great, thanks. The session we titled 6 Enterprise Mobility Priorities of Highly Effective CIOs Running JD Edwards, and we'll talk today about why we chose that particular topic. And first, I wanted to share with you just a little bit about Magic Software. My name is Glenn Johnson. I'm a Senior Vice President here at Magic Software, and we are very involved in the JD Edwards community, I think as most of you know. We have Oracle Validated Integration, which our Magic XPI integration platform allows you to connect any application to JD Edwards. We have strong enterprise mobility solutions which you can bolt on to JD Edwards as well. These are contextual apps that you can run on any mobile device. And that focus, as I said, on JD Edwards really is borne out by the fact that we are Quest Platinum partners, which of course is the JD Edwards users community, and Oracle Platinum partners as well. Magic Software has a solution base that involves an application platform from which you can build your mobile apps to bolt onto JD Edwards, and an integration platform from which you can connect JD Edwards to any other applications, websites, web services, processes, and so forth running in your environment. We also offer the mobile device management software that's needed to manage those mobile devices and any professional services that you might require to surround all of these solutions. So with that, let's go ahead and begin the thought leadership portion of our session, and then we'll be throwing it over to Andy in a few minutes to look at some live demonstrations of what we can do connecting mobile apps to JD Edwards. We did a survey of successful CIOs, or of CIOs in general, and then we looked at more than 80 of them in the JD Edwards community who were either CIOs or the top IT manager for their company. We asked them, in what areas they were successful and what programs were working for them and so forth in a number of different areas. Their success was self-assessed in the survey, and so of course that can introduce some minor biases. Some of us think we're doing a great job, others think the world is coming to an end perhaps, but in general it's a self-assessment. People that are happy, being happy is pretty important to most of us. And then what we found was that there were distinct differences between the top quartile and the bottom quartile of those who said that they were experiencing success in their programs, particularly as it related to the priorities that they had in their programs. So there was a direct correlation between success or satisfaction and what the CIOs considered priorities or important in managing their department. So those findings in general from the survey are what inform the presentation that we're looking at today, and the reason that we selected these 6 priorities. As Magic has learned how CIOs who habitually paid attention to these 6 maxims, they really excelled compared to their peers And it's based on this research that we're looking at these management areas for what really makes a difference in enterprise mobility strategies. And these are security, integration, scalability, focus on skilled resources, online connectivity, and deployment management. We'll speak to each of those briefly to get you an idea of what's involved. So in the area of prioritizing mobile security, what we discovered is that there were, of course, some essential understandings to security governance that were important. An effective strategy for enterprise security governance is, of course, going to reduce the risk of unauthorized access to IT systems and data. And highly effective CIOs are placing their highest priority on security governance activities. Through the Chief Information Security Officer, they institutionalize, they assess, they improve risk management and security policies. And these highly effective CIOs viewed security governance as a matter of collaboration with the CISO and not just a subject for delegation to the CISO. In fact, these highly effective CIOs held the CISO to a very high standard by ensuring that they had detailed written plans and policies in place for security and that they're actually following and observing those. And these effective CIOs also cared about how the various business units, the staff, the executives were working together to protect the organization's digital assets, to prevent data loss, protect the organization's reputation, and so on. So as these CIOs further responded to us, what we learned is that quite often the compliance and regulatory environment of that organization often provided a framework for enterprise security governance expectations. So other things that were affecting that were the mission, the culture, the management approach of the overall organization that was factored into their security governance policies. And these highly effective CIOs never compromised on security for the sake of getting along. The best CIOs know how to win over their CEO and their board and get support for the costs associated with enterprise security governance. The highly effective CIOs also frequently were found to conduct simulated threats, surprise inspections, utilize external compliance experts, all designed to maintain an elevated sense of organizational awareness, of self-awareness for their security requirements. And these threat, vulnerability, and risk assessments were taken seriously in their organizations and factored in to the uniqueness of these companies' business models and industries as well. With the rise of the internet, the enterprise security governance issues have obviously changed, and this has been around a long time now. But what's adding to that today is the emergence of increasing number of cloud applications in the environments, as well as the addition of enterprise mobility. So enterprise security governance strategies have to be significantly altered to take all of these factors into account. And the old ways of doing things, centralized data processing approaches, allowed an organization to focus on the hardening of assets by protecting, a central data processing physical location. But highly effective CIOs understand that an organization must still remain focused on reducing the chance that those physical assets that are owned by the company can be stolen or damaged or accessed. But obviously, they also know that mobile devices will be lost and stolen. It's a given. The certainty of loss has to be factored into security governance systems and plans. And so it's really quite different from trying to avoid loss to saying we know loss is going to take place. Phones are going to be lost. They're going to be misplaced. What do we have to do to our security systems in order to account for that, to factor that in? So traditionally, the governance of enterprise security had a lot of physical barriers, locks, fencing, fire response systems, lighting, alarm systems, all of these things, security cameras. And mobile devices are bringing up an entirely new set of requirements, including inventory and asset management, the ability to do remote lock and wipe a device, to be able to do app management, including the identification of rogue apps, to be able to create enterprise data boundaries, to get real-time roaming notifications, and obviously to be able to have persistent logs and audit trails for all of the activities that are taking place out there. So app-level security has three key areas that we look at. First is user authentication for the mobile apps, and governance policies for mobile apps must, obviously consider user authentication. We need to review the apps to be used in your enterprise for compliance with security practices for mobile user authentication. Acceptable approaches could combine encrypted passwords, location validation, physical device verification, biometrics, and similar approaches that authenticate and identify the user, the device, and the context. Multi-factor authentication, as it's called, will look at a minimum of 3 methods of authentication, and these usually are something you know, like a username or password, something you have, like your mobile device and the ID on your mobile device, and then something that you are, something biometric, a fingerprint, facial recognition, and so forth. Some of you may have seen in the news this week that the world has just announced that you can now pay at the point of sale by taking a selfie, for example. So the biometrics are increasingly being used for security purposes in a number of systems. Of course, when they take that selfie, they obviously, you've already logged into your device, so they have something you know, and the device itself is known from its identification. So they have the 3 levels of multi-factor authentication, but what everyone's talking about is the third piece, which is pay by selfie. It's a pretty hot topic right now. The second thing, of course, in terms of app-level security is managing those user rights. Now that we know who we're dealing with, what can they do? What are they allowed to do? And governance policies for mobile apps must also include the user authentication management. You need to review the apps to be used in your enterprise for compliance with security practices for user rights. And normally, the user rights are assigned and managed in each enterprise software system. JD Edwards has its own user rights, for example. Rights for the same user, however, in a mobile context may need to be reduced. And user rights may also need to be reduced when you're in an offline mobile app versus an online mobile app, because in the offline app, if there's a need for storage of certain information, encrypted obviously, you may not want to allow the user to do as much, because even though the information is encrypted, there are certain risks involved in that process. And so all that needs to be factored into those security policies. And then the third area we look at, of course, is obviously that encryption. Governance policies for mobile apps have to consider data and transport layer encryption and decryption, and all the mobile apps have to be validated for their ability to employ both encryption and decryption for data, metadata, transport layers, so for data in transit and data at rest. And generally, the apps need to support multiple options for encryption, such as RSA, DES3, Blowfish, RC4, RC5, IDEA, CAST, RC2, so on. So there's all these various encryption methods. Having choices gives you the option to basically have the level of security of encryption that's necessary for your environment, while at the same time getting the performance that you need. So that's security. The second priority was that these CIOs recognized the need to simplify mobile integration and integration needs across their organization. And so we identified 4 best practices related to mobile app integration. First of all, utilizing an event-driven architecture was key. So highly effective CIOs were guiding their organizations towards effective enterprise architecture, and since the APIs for mobile integration and legacy app integration don't have mutual awareness, they don't, one API doesn't know about the other API, an integration platform for API management should be used, and this will provide you with this needed event-driven architecture that allows business process orchestration to occur according to your business rules. Mobile users can be calling it at any time from anywhere, so it's definitely an event-driven environment. People are expecting real-time responsiveness. They're expecting to be able to interact to the up-to-the-minute information. So things like event triggers and event polling and scheduling should coexist with messaging approaches such as publish and subscribe, store and forward, acknowledge on delivery, request and reply, those kinds of techniques. And so your integration platform needs to provide you with those capabilities. The second area is that you need to be able to use flexible tools for data transformation. The highly effective CIO understands that this is an important area for mobile integration and legacy app integration because they don't have a common data definition. So data mapping and transformation are required elements of an integration platform, and they guide their organizations to choose a system that supports all kinds of data formats, from flat files and XML and JSON and databases to flow variables, operational metadata stores, user-defined storage on both the source and the destination side. And obviously that includes working with APIs and business functions in the J.D. Edwards environment and Z-file processes and so forth. And so these approaches need to take a complete solution towards transformation of the data. The third best practice in the area was related to facilitating trans-protocol processing. So these CIOs were aware that APIs for mobile integration and legacy app integration don't use the same transport mechanisms or protocols, and use of an integration platform is necessary to overcome the barriers between these systems. An integration platform needs to provide communication via SOAP and REST web services, JSON and messaging queues, things like JMS, MSQ, WebSphere MQ, other transport protocols, EDI, HTTP, FTP, and component architecture environments as well, such as .NET and COM and J2EE with Java objects and so forth. All you need to be able to call those, not that you're going to do any line-by-line programming, but you want to be able to consume them into a user dialog box that defines the integration process that's going to occur. And then the fourth one in this area is that there's a high-level documentation that needs to be done. It should be visual, so keeping an eye on governance means that clear communications and documentation of your business processes needs to be included in the solution. The third priority that we looked at was enhancing scalability and high availability. If you look at the requirements around big data, which is increasingly being created by mobile apps, you have the need for an in-memory solution. An in-memory solution is going to allow you to use things like elastic partitioning, user spaces, to co-locate memory and processing together in an in-memory data grid, and then mirror the writing of the information to the database in a write-behind activity so that things are occurring more quickly. What does that look like? Well, co-location is essentially a grid where you have dedicated memory and processing that's available to handle any particular task in your application, your mobile application space, your integration space, all the things that are happening that are bolted onto or integrating to J.D. Edwards need to be able to be highly scalable. Then the write behind occurs, as we said, when you write to the database after the completion of the transaction. This speeds things up greatly because the writing to the database is no longer considered to be part of the transaction time. The system can move on to the next transaction, and basically writing to the data tier becomes an archival activity because of the high reliability and redundancy that an in-memory data grid provides. And this gives you that dynamic scaling where we talk about load balancing, elastic provisioning, and the hot backup that this provides to these processes. So again, very key to have that scalability, that high availability as part of what you're offering in your organization. The next area that we looked at is enabling offline mode. These CIOs felt that disconnected mode or offline apps were extremely important. And so an offline app basically is one, obviously, that allows you to work even though you may not have a cell phone signal, for example, or you may not have a Wi-Fi signal for the tablet that's being used at that time. You can create an app that is designed to work offline and then synchronize later on. And these utilize native containers, which are highly secure on the mobile device, and then they store encrypted offline data. So the CIOs are guiding their organizations towards this sort of always-on approach. And offline programming requires you to overcome some limitations that are imposed by the challenges and constraints of working without a server connection. And so the solutions that are offered allow you to create apps that store a subset of relevant server data or client-only data locally on the client. Now, the business logic for offline mode needs to incorporate the startup routines for entering into offline mode. They need to allow you to authenticate a user when the device is offline. Completely different story. I mean, it's one thing to authenticate to the server where the credentials are stored on the server. Obviously, if you're not connected to the server, then authentication is going to need to occur on the device, and you're going to have some securely and encrypted authentication on that device. You want to be able to utilize local resources, be able to store information at least temporarily, and then you're going to want to be able to do the synchronization processes according to your business rules. It may be master to master, it may be another approach, but the synchronization options need to be there for both the data and the metadata that you're synchronizing. Now, the next area that we look at is reducing the number of skills that are required. As these organizations were looking at bringing mobile in, the biggest challenge is all of the different languages that they had to learn in order to create those mobile apps. You know, working in Objective-C and working in Java and so forth required a lot of new programming languages and skills, and that was just for the client side. Then there were server-side languages that were required to support those apps when they were creating native apps. So these CIOs recognized early in the adoption phase that mobile environments and devices were highly fragmented, and that there are vast differences between the operating systems, the versions, the device formats, the sizes, interfaces, and features were creating huge differences, and they're changing all the time. And so there's a big variety in development tools and skills that were needed to support that. What the CIOs that are effective are looking at is how can we approach this with a single skill set? How can we find solutions that allow us to pursue a strategy where we can overcome the problem of platform and device fragmentation? And so unlike typical native development or HTML5 JavaScript approaches, there are solutions available that leverage single skill sets for mobile application development and all of the server-side development as well, so that you have one IDE, one language, one approach to creating these cross-channel applications. And building a mobile application that can extend J. Edwards using a single skill set is a powerful solution for our organizations today. Now, the sixth area was in the area of mobile device management. Being able to manage these mobile devices centrally was very important to the organizations. Reliability and availability were hugely important when it came to selecting a mobile device management solution. So the mobile device management solution is obviously going to allow you to take care of things like security and provisioning on the mobile device itself. If the MDM goes down, in theory, your workforce could be down. So enterprises needed to understand, you know, how much downtime they could tolerate and set some pretty high standards for that. What is acceptable downtime? What solutions will allow them to have 24/7 availability with MDM that is available to manage systems spanning time zones and so forth. The systems that are most effective for MDM also need to be customizable. So when you're managing mobile devices in the enterprise, the next stage in mapping and planning MDM is to consider, how heavy or light the requirement for customization of that MDM will be. Will your company be happy to work with what comes out of the box, or do you have requirements that are unique to your business, to your regulatory environment, to your business model? And there are few MDM vendors that allow heavy customizations, and if this is a make or break issue for you, it will again significantly reduce the players in the field. And of course, we're happy to talk to you about the solutions that are available for that. Finally, you need to look at how the overall fit of that MDM system with your IT governance strategy. I mean, you already have a strategy of some kind, hopefully, in place, and an MDM is a key technology component in enforcing and enabling your IT governance and security strategy. So rather than forcing your company to change to the MDM, you need to look at it the other way around. How can we find an MDM solution that works with our security strategy and requirements? So pay attention to that IT strategic plan, to your governance and security policies when evaluating the MDM for suitability, and your MDM should conform to your requirements rather than adapting your strategy and plans to the MDM itself. So just a word about connectivity to J.D. Edwards. J.D. Edwards obviously provides, Oracle provides ways of interfacing J.D. Edwards, and those are things like business functions, business services, Z processes. However, none of those APIs have any knowledge of your mobile app, or how to work with your mobile app, or what data format things need to be in for your mobile apps, or any other integration requirements that you may have. So they are essentially a gateway, and that's an important piece of the puzzle. Now, depending upon what version of J.D. Edwards you're running, which J.D. Edwards, if you're in World, for example, well, with World A7.3 and above, Z files and processes were available, and that was the primary way in older editions of J.D. Edwards to get information in and out was through that proprietary flat file format, and that works very well. But with newer versions, newer methods and approaches have been incorporated, and so World 9 and above supports some business services, for example, but it's not a full set, so you still have Z processes involved. And then with Enterprise 1, you have the business functions, which I think are very, very effective and very comprehensive way of getting information in and out, but there's still some Z files and processes, of course, available to you as well for those kinds of flat file approaches. So you have a good deal of flexibility in choosing those. We think the business functions, are optimal, and the adapter that we provide that works with the mobile solutions that you can build actually works through those business functions with Enterprise 1 in order to ensure that J.D. Edwards policies are being enforced, and that's why the Magic solution has earned the Oracle Validated Integration medallion or certificate, whatever you want to call that particular capability. So what I'd like to do right now is thank you for listening to this portion of the presentation and hand things over to Andy. So let me find Andy amongst my list of folks here. I don't see Andy in the list.
Sorry, Glenn, I'm listed as Lori right now. Let me go ahead and change my name.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. There you are.
You should see it now.
Now I see you. Now I've made you the presenter. Okay, great. Go ahead, Andy.
All right. Thank you, Glenn. Okay, so for this portion of the demonstration, we're going to go ahead and go through several parts of our mobile to JDE solution, as well as go into some detail about our Magic XPA or application development platform, which we utilize to create our mobile applications. In this demonstration, we're going to be showing three main parts. The first part being an online mobile application that we developed that integrates to JDE. A second application, which we provided as an offline solution for a medical company. And the last is to kind of go over the Magic XPA Studio, as well as go over the deployment process and how Magic handles the deploying of these applications to Magic, to our mobile devices. And from there as well, we'll go ahead and go in to talk about the mobile application architecture that Magic XPA abides by. Okay, so for the first part of the demonstration, just to give a little background of this this company, this application was developed for an electric supply company, and the application is a proof of delivery application. Prior to the application being developed, the company had a front desk in which they would receive packages and deliverables, and customers would come in, sign off on a paper invoice, and from there the invoice was passed on to the accounting firm, in which they entered into JDE and went ahead and flagged as processed and flagged as the package had been delivered. So what we went ahead and did was we developed an iOS application for this company. iOS, more specifically, the application was developed for an iPod Touch. And furthermore, the application, the iPod Touch was connected to a Honeywell sled, which is just a laser barcode scanning piece of hardware. Now, the demonstration that we're going to be showing today, the application is actually being has been deployed to an Android device. So we'll also go over a little bit into how Magic XPA provides cross-platform functionality. Okay, so with the beginning of the application starts with a login screen. So I'll go ahead and log in here. And what we're seeing is a Nexus 7 tablet device, and I'm mirroring a physical device onto my screen currently. So currently I'm going to go ahead and log into the application. The application is just verifying credentials against an MS SQL database. In the event that authentication should be through JDE, we have other solutions in which we have done that. It's simply just a lookup in one of the address book master tables. Okay, at this part of the application, this is the main screen of the proof of delivery application, and from here the users at the front desk would go ahead and either scan a barcode on an invoice or a barcode on the package itself. In the event that the barcode scanner, the device is not attached to the barcode scanner, they also have an option for manual entry here. So when I click the scan pick ticket number, what it's doing here is it's checking to see in runtime if the application is running on an Android device or an iOS device. In the event that it's running an iOS device, we have an event handler triggering the Honeywell barcode scanner to initiate its scanning laser. But here, since we're deploying on Android, it's actually calling the native device's camera and utilizing a Neo Reader barcode scanning software or application inside of the device to scan the barcode. So what I'm going to go ahead and do here is what you see on the camera is I'm scanning a piece of paper here, and as you can see on the invoice, we have an order total, we have line items, and I'm going to go ahead and scan over my barcode. Now it's going to process for a few seconds here to check against JDE to ensure that this barcode, that this order 2416 exists. In the event that it does, it's going to enter it into the field. We'll go ahead and click Submit, and that's our first API call to JDE with this application. I'm going to switch gears now over to my JDE interface, and here we have JDE E1, and I'm going to go ahead and do a search on order 2416. Okay, and here we can see under order 2416, we're selling it to a customer named Creekside Warehouse with an order total of $16,250. When I switch back over to my device, we can see that those order details are what was pulled in from that specific order. So at this point in the business process, the customer verifies that the information is correct and that the order total matches what they were expecting, and from here the customer can choose to accept the order. At this point, the customer will be prompted to go ahead and sign off that they had picked up the package. And we'll go ahead and sign here and accept the signature. Now, again, this is with the Android solution. With Android, what we're doing is we're pulling in the PDF directly onto the device and opening it in a PDF reader in which they can sign off. With the iOS solution with most JDE solutions, the electric supply company was using Bottomline to merge bitmap images to the PDFs themselves externally outside of Magic. So all we had to do was provide them with a HTML JavaScript page within the application in which they signed, and that outputted a bitmap image. But here with the Android version of the application, we're outputting a signed PDF. Okay, so after I finish off with my signature, I'm going to go ahead and save the PDF, and I'll go ahead and submit my signature back into JDE. Okay. At this point in the process, the customer can choose whether or not they would like to send a copy of the signed receipt to their email or not. So I'll go ahead and click yes. And this is the final call to JDE. What we're seeing here is a box prompted with preset emails. These emails are coming from the contacts that are associated with the account that placed the order for this order 2416. So here we have 3 contacts. We have Mark, Andy, and Ryan. I'm going to go ahead and choose mine. And again, this list is being populated from all the contacts that are associated with this sales order. I'll go ahead and click send here. And now what I'm going to do is, before I check my email to see that the email has been sent to me with the signed PDF, I'm actually going to go back over to my JDE interface and refresh my search. And what we'll see here is now we have an attachment tag, a new attachment to this order. If I click the attachment, we'll go ahead and see that we have the signed PDF pushed back to JDE. Okay. And then switching over to my email, let me go ahead and pull up the email here that was sent to our email inbox. Okay, so we have a Mayor Electric Supply for sales order 2416 sent here at 11:36 a.m. And if we go ahead and open it up, we have a copy of our signed PDF. Okay. Now, that ends the first part of our demonstration for the electric supply company application. And now, before we move on to the offline solution, or the offline application, what I want to go over here is that this application was developed as what we call an online application. And what we mean by that is that this application has the assumption that it's always connected to our application server. A little bit of background on our application architecture is what we're installing onto these mobile devices is what we call true client applications. Whether it's installing IPAs onto iOS or APKs onto Android machines, the only thing that we're installing on these devices is a native application that simply stores where the application server or the Magic XPA broker is located and what application to execute on that server. Okay. With an online solution, it's under the assumption that this application will have connectivity to that server at all times. In this specific case, because the device is not moving, it's always going to be at the front desk of the electric supply company. Now, in the event that we need to provide an offline solution, or that the device is constantly moving in and out of network bounds, we offer an offline solution as well, in which the metadata is, instead of being processed on the server, is being stored onto the client's device, as Glenn had mentioned with the offline architecture. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up my device here again. And now we're going to go ahead and open up our Boston University work order management application. Okay, so this application is a work order management application in which we developed for the Boston University and the Boston Medical Center. Like with most enterprise applications, we start off with a login screen. However, this application is fully built offline. All the information that we're seeing here is being stored local onto the device. So as opposed to before, when we logged into the Mayor Electric Supply application, in which the credentials were checked against a SQL database, now we're just checking against local tables on the device itself. So I'll go ahead and log in here. Okay, and inside of the application here, we can see that there's one cached work order on this device. Now, if I go ahead and press the sync button here, I can't take the device offline, or else it'll disconnect this device monitoring application. But here, what I went ahead and did was I shut down the application server on the server end. So basically, although the device is still connected to a wireless network, it's actually offline because the server is offline. And as we can see here, the sync failed because the device is offline. Now, with all offline applications, we go through kind of depending on the business process. Determining on how to handle duplicate records, we handle based on the amount of traffic when it comes to syncing records. With this specific application itself, technicians would be working on 7 to 8 work orders a day, so traffic was relatively low. So for this particular application, what we're doing is we're syncing and we're determining which records take precedence based on timestamps down to the millisecond. But in the event that there is more traffic, then we'll need to take into account exactly what process is best, whether it be account hierarchy, whether a specific account takes precedence over another, or whether timestamps will be sufficient. So just like any other offline application, when it comes to syncing records, that solely depends on what your solution will require. So along with this application, we also have a scan, access to the scanning of a barcode. Okay, so again, that's the offline solution. So going back over into the architecture of our mobile applications, we have our online solutions in which the server or the Magic XPA broker handles all the metadata transfer from the server, from the records, going down to what screens are being displayed. The server handles those requests and pushes it to the device. But when it comes to the offline solution, the server catches that it's an offline application and basically caches all the dependencies and all the metadata on the device itself. So in theory, once the device is connected, to the server, from there on out, it does not need to connect anymore, except for syncing processes, obviously. Okay. Let me go ahead and get my connection from my device back to the monitoring application, and then we'll go ahead and move on to our last part of the demonstration. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and switch over to my Magic XPA Studio now. That's what you should be seeing on your screen. And as Glenn had mentioned, the Magic XPA methodology is an event-based driven language. Here we have 2 main repositories, and I won't go too into detail on these. I just want to give kind of a quick overview. But basically, we have a data repository in our studio where we define all the data sources or databases we're going to access in this application. Switching over to our programs repository, for those of you that have developed before, basically these are a set of methods, if you will, whether there's batch methods or batch tasks or programs that have interfaces to them. And what I want to do is go ahead and take you into our login screen. So going into our login, going into a specific program, we're prompted with 3 views. We have our data view, which shows us what data sources this method or program will be accessing. Our logic, where we code our event handlers, and our forms, which is our interface designer. So basically what I'm designing here on my screen is I have a form designer in which I can drag, drop, and configure my interface. For instance, here I have a submit button. And under the submit button, if we take a look in the properties box here, it's set to raise a user event called login. Now, basically what it's stating here is when the device connects to the server doesn't really care about what device is connecting to the server, just the connection. And when this login screen is prompted to be displayed on the device, it simply stores a menu and a button. And when this button is raised, when this button is pressed, it raises an event called login. And we'll go into the login handler in just a second. The last thing I wanted to show is the XPA Studio, and one thing that has helped with the new XPA 3.0 is this mobile device previewer. Basically, we can cycle through several devices to go ahead and show us what our application will look like on several different screen sizes. As mentioned before, this device was developed, this application is currently being demonstrated on a Nexus 7 device, so it has a 7-inch screen. And if we cycle through, say, an iPad, we can see that for larger screens, we've set the application to adjust accordingly. Okay. All right, so that's it for the mobile form preview. So let me go ahead and switch back over to our login screen. Here again, when we press the submit button, it raises an event login. And when I escape out of here and go to our logic view, we have our event handler for login. So now what it's doing here is when we press the login button, it goes ahead and raises another method which validates the login against our SQL database. And in the event that the login is valid, it'll go ahead and proceed to the next screen. And in the event that it is invalid, it'll go ahead and prompt us that the credentials were invalid and wait for a correct set of logins. Okay, so that's basically the studio, and in terms of coding and kind of how Glenn mentioned that Magic XPA is an event-driven language. The last part I wanted to go through is deployment, which is one of the bigger topics for our mobile application when it comes to developing mobile applications. You know, again, with mobile apps, you can develop it. You have the interface designer, but with all the different operating systems out there, or with Android and iOS having their own deployment methods, Magic XPA provides a wizard in which this kind of makes it a little bit easier for us to deploy applications into APK mode for Android or for IPAs for iOS. So going into my rich client deployment wizard here, we're prompted to create a new configuration. I'll go ahead and go through an existing configuration here. On the first screen we have is our application settings. So here's where we enter in the information of what our application will look like when installed onto a device. The application title is the name of the application that will be displayed after the application has been installed. We also have the option of adding in application descriptions, publishers, and copyright information. On the next screen, as I mentioned before, what we're installing onto these devices are true client applications. Again, the only information that is actually stored on these client applications is where this, the XPA broker or XPA application server is being hosted and what application to execute. So here on this screen, we're entering the server address of where our broker is located. So I have my development 2 machine, .magic-inc.com, in which I'm going to connect to. On the next screen is I have my execution details. This is the second part of the second property of our client applications. What application to execute on the server. Applications are keyed by their application name when it comes to the Magic XPA broker. The broker can host many applications, several applications, so they're denoted by their application name. So what I'm stating here on this screen is that I'm going to execute the Mayor mobile application, and the start program I'm going to execute is main, or the main program. The start program is the first program or method that we saw in that program repository that we're going to execute initially when the application is executed. So in this case, it raises the login screen, which I named main here. Okay. And on the next screen, I'm prompted to what operating systems I want to deploy to. Okay. If I choose iOS, what it's going to prompt me for is my provisioning file and my developer name. And what it's going to output to me is an Xcode project that I can go ahead and open it up into Xcode and create the IPA from. When it comes to these applications, what we're creating is not our own proprietary applications and installers. We're using the native SDKs of the respective operating systems to create these applications installers. So with the IPAs, we're using Xcode to create the IPAs, and with the APKs, we're using the native Android SDK. And we do this to for 2 main reasons. One, to ensure that we're maintaining the native look and feel of our application, and 2, that we have full access to all hardware and APIs stored on the device, meaning that these applications have full access to whatever hardware features that the device has, whether it's access to retrieving information such as what operating system is on the device, what operating system version, what the physical screen size is, what the physical screen width is, down to the very hardware such as accessing the device's camera, or even accessing the device's GPS hardware, in which we can use to pull in the latitude and longitude of the physical device itself. Okay, so for iOS here, we're getting an Xcode project in which we can import into our Xcode Studio to create the IPAs. And then lastly, going into Android, Or when we select to deploy to Android, it prompts us to point to where the Android SDK is loaded and prompts us for whatever API level we would like to deploy to, or what Android operating system version we'd like to. Okay. So that's pretty much it for my demonstration. Glenn, do you want to go ahead and turn it over to questions?
Yes, I think Cynthia has some questions that she may have been monitoring as they came in.
Okay.
So at this time, if you have a question, please feel free to enter it into the question box or the chat box, and we will be happy to answer those questions at this time. Looks like Cynthia is muted, so we're not hearing you if you're speaking, Cynthia.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm rattling along. Yeah, we do have we do have a couple of questions right at the moment. Yes, so one is how does Magic handle duplicate entries that may occur while in offline mode?
So as I mentioned before, this comes down to the business process and what kind of traffic it comes into the when it comes to the syncing process. With that Boston University application, as I mentioned, there was only maybe 7 transactions per technician being synced a day. So for that specific solution, the timestamps sufficed. But in the event that we're coming in through maybe tens to hundreds of transactions a day, you can see how that may pose drawbacks with just a simple timestamp. We could do a combination from there of account hierarchy. Whatever account logs in has a specific role or priority list in terms of precedency for the sync process. So when it comes down to it, it all depends on the business process of your solution.
Okay. All right. I have a couple more questions, so hang with me.
Yep, no problem.
How does Magic authenticate users?
So Magic, that's kind of a general question. It's however the customer wants to authenticate for the most part. In these specific examples I gave today for these applications, it was just a simple kind of a high-level security in that the credentials were being stored on an MS SQL database. But in the event that they wanted to take authentication a step further, say authenticating against JDE, we could perform a lookup on the JDE tables as well instead of just kind of a staging users table.
Okay. And then I have somebody asking, are we going to have a link to the recorded webinar? And I believe the answer to this is actually yes, that we will have a link to the recorded webinar. So I think it takes a little bit of time to get that to you, but we will have that, correct?
Yes, we should have we've been recording, so we will make that available.
Excellent. All right. Yeah, I should have checked to see that the recording was successfully turned on. So let's see. Any additional questions coming in? I think that's all I have at the moment. So we can take another couple of minutes to see if anybody is completing a question at this time. And as we're looking at that, is there anything else that you want to add, Glenn or Andy, about what we've seen today?
No, I think that is fantastic. Thank you very much again to JDE Works and to all of you for attending today's webinar. If you have any questions, I know that Cynthia and Dina and the entire team at JDE Works is happy to help you out, and we are here to support them in helping you. So thanks again for your attention, and we look forward to talking to you real soon.
Thank you both for this very valuable information. And I should add to the audience, tell all your friends and let us know, and we'll hook you up. So everybody, I don't see any more questions coming in at this point. So I want to thank all of the attendees, myself, and then let you know that I'm going to go ahead and terminate this webinar. And we thank you all very much for your participation.